Good morning or afternoon. My name is Aiden Nipper, and today I'm going to be talking about how cigarette smoking is impacting our world and what we can do to change it. Before I begin, I would like to ask everyone to take out a sheet of paper and something to write with, and write down these four numbers: 1100, 1 billion, 8 million, and 65,000. Again, that's 1100, 1 billion, 8 million, and 65,000. This is an image that Chris Jordan, a famous photographer, created of multiple cigarette boxes. As we zoom out, we see these cigarette boxes form an image, and this image is Van Gogh's skull with a cigarette. This image is comprised of 400,000 cigarette boxes. This equals the number of Americans that die each year from cigarette smoking. With that data, we can find out 1,100 Americans die each day from cigarette smoking. Now, it's a crazy thing to think about that on 9/11, 3,000 Americans died that day. Do you remember the response? The mourning people had, the sense of loss. The mourning, it went on for days, weeks, months, and that event continues to reverberate through time and will continue to do so for years on end. But did you know that 1,100 Americans died that day from smoking? And the day after, 1,100 Americans died. And the day after that, and even today, 1,100 Americans died from smoking. What's our response? My uncle is a smoker. He smoked for as long as I can remember. And each holiday that we have, he has to take time to step out of the house in order to fulfill a desire caused by addiction. He sacrifices time with his family to fulfill this desire. For too long, we've dismissed the effects of tobacco. We say, oh, the tobacco lobby is just too strong. But knowing the destructive properties of cigarette smoking, we have to do something. And there are ways that we can raise taxes and prices of tobacco through the government. We can place bans on tobacco advertisement and even get governmental assistance in helping people quit smoking. But sometimes these aren't all feasible. And I believe the one way that we can truly save lives is by personal intervention. You may say, why, Aiden? Why take away someone's right to smoke? Well, you're right. I'm trying to strip away somebody's right to smoke. Strip away a tool for a temporary desire that may and will give somebody a longer, healthier, happier life without the bondage of addiction. Now, what's the problem? Tobacco in the 20th century killed over 100 million people, and it's estimated today that 1 billion people will die in the 21st century. Go ahead and square that number, 1 billion, and say estimated to die this century. This next picture shows over 8 million people that died prematurely in 2017. Go ahead and underline 8 million, and right next to it, died prematurely in 2017. If we look at the secondhand smoke death rate, about 1.2 million, we see that 1.2 million is more than the amount of people that died that year in car accidents globally. Now, what can we do? Again, the prominent steps I said are raising taxes and prices, placing bans, getting government support, and as we see in these maps, in the share of tobacco retail price that is taxed in 2014, we see the countries that place the tax on tobacco products. And the lighter colors show that there's less of a tax and it's easier to buy these products. There's not a lot of dark blue. The enforcement of bans on tobacco advertising. We see only a few dark blue countries with a complete ban on tobacco advertisement. Most of the other countries have a direct or some indirect ban, and others have no ban, like America. We see the national government support to help somebody quit tobacco use. And we see maybe close to 10 countries that will support their citizens in helping them quit smoking tobacco. The rest of the countries offer no support, little cost, or some cost. Now, if we could truly feel this issue, I believe it would change how much it matters to us, more than it does right now. Then we'll be able to find within each one of us what it is that we need to find to answer the big question, which is how do we change? How do we change as a culture? How do we each individually change and take responsibility of the one thing that we're in charge of? That is our own behavior. We don't have to make ourselves the bad guy. We don't have to point our fingers at smokers and say that they're worse than us. That's not what I'm saying at all. We have a choice, though. If we see something in our society that we don't like these deaths, we have a choice to make. And let's think about for a second, if we don't do anything, the effects this toll will take on the future generations to come, that it will take on our children, the billions of people that are to come in this world in future generations. Now I want to compare it real quick to the racial injustice that we've been impacted by recently. For years on end, there was racial injustice, and even today there's racial injustice, but there is no unified cry of America. And because of that, I believe that's why there is no progress. Unfortunately, it took the deaths of many young men and women in order to get this unified cry of America. Slowly but surely, we're making progress now because of this mourning, this unified mourning that we have now as Americans. What if we could do that for smoking? You know, you'd be right in saying that a smoker can't overcome this addiction alone. That's where we come in. That's where we have to feel this issue and talk to our loved ones. And that's what I'm calling you guys to do today. Is ask a loved one, someone you know who smokes or is caught up in an addiction, if they've ever thought of quitting and if they want to. This next image will also show what happens if we don't do anything. Each cigarette represents a teenager that starts smoking in America each year. As we zoom out, we see over exactly 65,000 cigarettes in this picture, which represents the 65,000 teens that will start smoking in America this year. And go ahead and circle that 65,000. Right next to it, right? Teens start smoking this year in America. Now, how can we fix it? That's the big question. Again, I told you to think of a loved one and ask them if they've ever wanted to quit this addiction, if they've ever wanted to stop. We have to speak up about this issue. Several of the world's leading causes of death are caused by smoking. Cancer, heart disease, respiratory disease, the list goes on. Understanding the amount of deaths that smoking causes, we have to act. What can we do? Again, we can attempt to raise prices and taxes, place bans, get governmental support. But at the end of the day, is that really going to help each individual smoker? I don't think so. I think personal intervention is the one way that we can save individual lives, individual smokers, from running down this path to death. If we ask those addicted to smoking if they've ever thought of quitting, I truly, truly believe that these drastic numbers that our brains can't even comprehend, these billions, the 1 billion, the 8 million, the 1.2 million, that we have to understand by using pictures, which is what Chris Jordan does for a living, I believe those big numbers would get smaller and smaller and smaller. Chris Jordan in 2005 said, "I have this fear. We aren't feeling enough as a culture right now. I feel this kind of anesthesia in America. We've lost our sense of outrage, our anger, our grief about what's going on in our culture right now." 15 years later, I believe Chris Jordan is still right. We've lost this unified outrage, anger, and grief. As I mentioned earlier with racial injustice, I believe we found that unified cry. I believe we're making progress now. But are we feeling this issue enough? Are we feeling the effects of smoking on our world today enough? Right now, I'm going to ask each one of you to take out your phone, and I'll do the same. Think of a loved one, someone who is caught up in smoking or any addiction for that matter. I want you to pull up their number and text them, as I'm going to text my uncle right now, and tell them that you're thinking of them and that you love them. You may be surprised at their response. I bet it may change their life. Thank you.